We live in a country where we have freedom to worship as we see fit. I have no idea how many different expressions of Christianity, and Catholicism and Judaism, Buddhism, and all of these that we have in this country today. My faith is important to me. I continue to grow, to attempt to grow in faith. But my expression, while I choose to express it through one particular denomination, does not prevent me from living in harmony with people who have different faith, or people who have no faith at all. I don't think there's any excuse for theological differences negatively impacting the way we choose to live together. My best example for that, best expression of it, came when I was serving as a campus pastor at Purdue University in Indiana. At that time, there were upwards of 25,000 students. The university did not serve supper on freshman Sunday evening, but all the freshmen were gathered to the Hall of Music where they got their orientation. They gave them all the nuts and bolts of and what it means to be a student at Purdue, and their indoctrination or orientation, if you will. And because the dorms didn't serve supper, the various religious groups would gather outside the Hall of Music with these huge signs that would say Baptist Student Fellowship, Newman Center, Hillel Foundation, Wesley Foundation, whatever. And then as the students were dismissed, people who would see the signs and they would go to whatever their particular choice was. It's all voluntary. And then we would walk with a sign leading the way back to our various religious centers and do our own orientation. And as the Methodist, the Wesley Foundation, we would have 600-700 students. And we did the best we could. Our center wouldn't hold that many, so we'd have to say stand outside and on the lawn, and we did the best we could to give them some packet of information and let them know what they could expect while they were at the university from our perspective. And it worked okay, but it was I kept trying to find a way that we could do that better. And then I thought one year, instead of doing that, why not charter city buses, spend the money that we would spend on the supper for them, and charter city buses and get the members of the local churches to host 20-25 students. Do two things. One, it would get the students into the homes of church members, because one of the things that was always a tension was between the local church and the campus ministry. And it would give them a chance to visit with each other. I thought it was a good idea. And so we decided to do it. So that Sunday evening that year, we had our sign, and some of the students were standing there, and they brought the sign back over, and the kids followed. And we just gave them a packet of information and put them on the buses right away so we could get them out as quick as we could. And everything was working well until my associate said, you know, we've just run out of students. We've got homes, we've got the buses lined up, and we've got homes 4 homes that have prepared meals and we don't have any more students. We couldn't go back and redistribute and do that. And he said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I think I'll go borrow some students. He said, what? Well, I walked up the street about a block and a half, to the Newman Center, the Roman Catholics. At that time, there were more Catholic students at Purdue than there were at Notre Dame. Huge amount of students. And it was a warm fall afternoon, and a lot of them had lined up outside of St. Tom's, waiting to get in. And Father Pickett, the director, was there. And he said, Max, what's going on? And I said, well, I got a problem. I said, I've got all these homes lined up for students, and I just ran out of students. I need to borrow 75 students. He said, not a problem. So he walked outside where the students were lined up, and he said, listen up. You've got a couple of options. You can stay in this hot line. It'll take about a half an hour to get in, and sit on the cool concrete floor and get a hot dog and a cup of milk. Or you can go with Father Hale and get a home-cooked meal. Well, the last 75 in the line peeled off, and I had 75 students. Walked back down to the Wesley Foundation, put them on the buses, got them out, problem solved. Well, not entirely. The next morning, I'm walking across the campus, and I ran into the Dean of Student Housing. And Bill had been somewhat critical of our program in the past, and he saw me and he yelled. He said, Max, wait a minute. And I thought, oh boy, here it goes. He said, like you said, like you asked, we had a meal cooked for 25 students, and we got them. And I got them all in the living room, and we were sitting around, and I was trying to get them introduced. And you told me they'd have a packet of material, and I noticed they all had it. So I started to get everybody to introduce themselves, and I said to the kid sitting next to me, I said, would you tell us your name and where you're from and what church you go to? And the kid said, well, I'm David Johnson. I'm from Mishawaka, and I go to St. Paul's. And I said, St. Paul's? I didn't know, I don't remember a Methodist church in Mishawaka by the name of St. Paul's. And the kid said, no, sir, it's Catholic. So I said to everybody sitting around, I said, we don't mind if he's Catholic, do we? And they said, no. Well, he said every damn one of them was Catholic. And I thought, well, all this effort to build up good relations is going down the tubes. And then he said, let me tell you something. I think that was a stroke of genius. He said, we had a great time. We talked about the university. We talked about the different places where they were from. We talked about their churches. He said, we had a great time. He said, I think that was a stroke of genius. We ought to do this every year. And I said, Bill, I am glad you had a good time. But we never did it another year. But I think there's no reason why we can't live like that. The irony of that story is that 20 miles outside of Purdue, the Methodist pastor and the Catholic priest wouldn't even talk to each other. We still have some of that going on. But every once in a while, in different ways, we break free of that can hold on to our theological perspectives, our understanding of God, and still get along together and share in the joy of creation. Don't you think so?